Hi, it's Maria from Still Dreaming Homestead. Glad to be back with you. And we're going to continue reading in our new book from the Little House series, On the Banks of Plum Creek by Laura Ingalls Wilder. We're already on chapter 3. So far, they bought property. They traded the wagon and their horses and the colt for the property from Mr. Hanson, and they've discovered their new house and the stable, what it looks like. So now we're on chapter 3. I'll show you the picture. Rushes and Flags. Kind of looks like a cattail to me. Second. Every morning after Mary and Laura had done the dishes, made their bed, and swept the floor, they could go out to play. All around the door, the morning glory flowers were fresh and new, springing with all their might out of the green leaves. All along Plum Creek, the birds were talking. Sometimes a bird sang, but mostly they talked. Tweet, tweet, oh, twitter, tweet, tweet. One said, then another said, chee, chee, chee. And another laughed, choo. Laura and Mary went over the top of their house and down along the path where Pa led the oxen to water. There along the creek rushes were growing and blue flags. Every morning the blue flags were new. They stood up dark blue and proud among the green rushes. Each blue flag had 3 velvet petals that curved down like a lady's dress over hoops. From its waist, 3 ruffled, silky petals stood up and curved together. When Laura looked down inside them, she saw 3 narrow, pale tongues, and each tongue had a strip of golden fur on it. Sometimes a fat bumblebee, all black velvet and gold, was bumbling and budding in there. The flat creek bottom was warm, soft mud. Little pale yellow and pale blue butterflies hovered there and alighted and sipped. That means they landed on it. Bright dragonflies flew on blurry wings. The mud squeezed up between Laura's toes, where she stepped and where Mary stepped, and where the oxen had walked were tiny pools of water from their footprints. There they waded in the shallow water. Where they waded in the shallow water, a footprint would not stay. First, a swirl like smoke came up from it. That's the mud. And wavered away in the clear water. Then the footprint slowly melted. The toes smoothed out, and the heel was only a small hollow. There were tiny fish in the water. They were so small you could hardly see them. Only when they went swiftly, sometimes a silver belly flashed. When Laura and Mary stood still, these little fishes swarmed around their feet and nibbled. It was a tickly feeling. On top of the water bugs skated. They had long legs, and each of their feet made a wee dent in the water. Wee means small. It was hard to see a water bug. He skated so fast that before you saw him, he was somewhere else. The rushes in the wind made a wild, lonely sound. They were not soft and flat like grass. They were hard and round and sleek and jointed. One day when Laura was wading in the deep places by the rushes, she took hold of a big one and pulled herself up on the bank. It squeaked. For a minute, Laura could hardly breathe. And she pulled another. It squeaked and came in two. The rushes were little hollow tubers fitted together at the joints. The tubes squeaked when you pulled them apart. They squeaked when you pushed them back together again. Laura and Barry pulled them apart to hear them squeak. Then they put little ones together to make necklaces. They put big ones together to make long tubes. They blew through the tubes into the creek and made bubbles. They blew at the little fishes and scared them. Whenever they were thirsty, they would drop a long drink of water through those tubes. Ma laughed when Laura and Mary came to dinner and supper, all splashed and muddy, with green necklaces around their necks and long green tubes in their hands. They brought her bouquets of the blue flags, and she put them on the table to make it pretty. "I declare," she said, "you two play in the creek so much you'll be turning into water bugs." Pa and Ma did not care how much they played in the creek, only they must never go upstream beyond the little Willow Valley. The creek came around a curve there. It came out of a hole full of deep, dark water. They must never go near that hole, not even to see it. "Someday I'll take you there," Pa promised them. And one Sunday afternoon, he told them this is the day. Well, that was a very short chapter, so I'm going to read chapter 4, Deep Water. Here's the picture. In the dugout, Laura and Mary took off all their clothes, and over their bare skins, they put on old patched dresses. Ma tied on her sunbonnet, Pa took Carrie in his arm, and they set out. They went past the cattle path and the rushes, past the Willow Valley and the plum thickets. They went down a steep, grassy bank, and then across a level place where the grass was tall and coarse. They passed a high, almost straight-up wall of earth where no grass grew. "What is that, Pa?" Laura asked, and Pa said, "That is a tableland, Laura." He pushed on through the thick, tall grass, making a path for Ma and Mary and Laura. Suddenly, they came out on the high grass, and the creek was there. Out of the high grass, and the creek was there. It ran twinkling over the white gravel into a wide pool, curved against a low bank where the grass was short. Tall willows stood up on the other side of the pool. Flat on the water lay a shimmery picture of those willows, with every green leaf fluttering. That was the reflection. Ma sat on the grassy bank and kept Carrie with her while Laura and Mary waded in the pool. "Stay near the edge, girls," Ma told them. "Don't go in where it's deep." The water came up to their skirts and made them float. Then the calico got wet and stuck to their legs. That's the type of fabric it was, or material, calico. Laura went in deeper and deeper. The water came up and up almost to her waist. She squatted down and it came up to her chin. Everything was watery, cool, and unsteady. Laura felt very light. Her feet were so light they almost lifted off the creek bottom. She hopped and splashed with her arms. Splashing. "Oh, Laura, don't!" Mary cried. "Don't go any farther, Laura," Ma said. Laura kept on splashing. One big splash lifted both her feet. Her feet came up and her arms did as they pleased. Her head went under the water. She was scared. There was nothing to hold on to, nothing solid anywhere. Then she was standing up, streaming water all over, but her feet were solid. Nobody had seen that. Mary was tucking up her skirts. Ma was playing with Carrie. Pa was out of sight among the willows. Laura walked as fast as she could in the water. She stepped down deeper and deeper. The water was up past her middle, up to her arms. Suddenly, deep down in the water, something grabbed her foot. The thing jerked and she went down in the deep water. She couldn't breathe. She couldn't see. She grabbed and she couldn't get a hold of anything. Water filled her ears and her eyes and her mouth. Then her head came up out of the water close to Pa's head. He was laughing. "Well, young lady," Pa said, "you went out too far. How did you like it?" Here she is. Laura could not speak. She had to breathe. "You heard Ma tell you to stay close to the bank," said Pa. "Why didn't you obey her? You deserve a dunking. And I dunked you. Next time you'll do as you're told." "Yes, Pa," Laura sputtered. "Oh, Pa, please do it again." Pa said, "Well, Then he gave his great laugh among the willows. "Why didn't you holler when I dunked you?" he asked Laura. "Weren't you scared?" "I was awful scared," Laura gasped, "but please do it again." And she asked him, "How did you get down there, Pa?" Pa told her he'd swum under the water from the willows. But they could not stay in the deep water. They must go back to the bank and play with Mary. All that afternoon, Pa and Laura and Mary played in the water. They waded and they fought water fights. And whenever Laura or Mary went near the deep water, Pa dunked them. Laura was a good girl after one dunking, but Laura was dunked many times. When it was almost chore time, they had to go home. They went dripping along the path through the tall grass, and when they came to the tableland, Laura wanted to climb it. Pa climbed partway up, and Laura and Mary climbed, holding his hands. The dry dirt slipped and slid. Tangled grass roots hung down from the bulging edge overhead. Then Pa lifted Laura up and set her on the tableland. It was really like a table. That ground rose up high above the tall grass, and it was round and flat on the top. The grass there was short and soft. Pa and Laura and Mary stood on the top of that tableland and looked over the grass tops and the pool to the prairie beyond. They looked all around the prairie, stretching to the rim of the sky. Then they had to slide down to the lowland and go home. That had been a wonderful afternoon. "It's been lots of fun," Pa said, "but you girls remember what I told you. Don't you ever go near that swimming hole unless I'm with you." That would be very important because we wouldn't want them to drown. And that's important if your parents tell you not to go in the deep water without they're right there, that you don't. I want you to be safe. Well, it's Maria from Still Dreaming Homestead. I want to pray blessings on you and on yours, in your house and out of your house, in the day and the night. And whatever you do, keep dreaming and keep a story in your heart. All right, good night.